The passing of Captain Orwin left more questions than answers on what the mercenaries encountered in Mordheim. His two sons, Elric and Wilshire, gathered the men to say a few words in his memory, how he bravely fought off two mutated rats before being slain. The men soon discovered that no place in Mordheim is safe. Distant groans and deep growls fill the air around them. Wilshire muttered a single word aloud before the men drew swords. Necromancy. It's coming up next as MGM presents Mordheim, A Song of Stones.
Alright, welcome back to MGM, a great place for casual gaming. We're back with our third game of Mordheim. The dead have risen and look to destroy what is left of humanity within the city. The undead are led by a vampire with a sword. They also have a necromancer with the spell Death Vision. 3 dregs accompany them with 1 direwolf, 4 ghouls, and 5 zombies. The Reikland mercenaries lay in tatters after the death of their leader. Elric assumes command with his double-handed sword and light armor. The champion, Merrick, follows him to battle with Eric's brother, a young blood named Wilshire. Umar is back, along with groups of marksmen and swordsmen. The scenario today is Occupy. We'll be playing on a 4x4 table today, and many of these buildings were designed by Skirmish Tabletop Terrain. I'll put a link for them in the description, and I highly recommend checking them out. The objective is to capture D3 plus 2 buildings. For us, we rolled up for 4. We'll mark these starting with the closest to the center and work our way outwards. A building is occupied if a model is inside with no enemy models inside. Route tests will be excluded in this game, as it will last for 8 turns unless one side voluntarily routes. We really hope you enjoy the game. As a note, we are still learning Mordheim. You can help us if you see any mistakes. Just feel free to leave a comment down below. Turn 1 is coming up. Please give us a like if you enjoy the video. Alright, forces have deployed 8 inches in from a board edge. The undead will take the priority for this game. In the undead's movement phase, we've got dregs moving up the left flank in a pair. The wolf along with the vampire, the necromancer, and some ghouls are going to go down the center. Over on the undead right flank, we have ghouls moving forward with a run maneuver, and the zombies are going to lumber forwards behind them. The necromancer successfully casts Death Vision, granting him fear for the entire game. And as we move over to the Reiklanders, we do have some marksmen moving along their right flank. As we look to the center of the board, 2 marksmen move forward along with a swordsman and the young blood Wilshire. On their left flank, Elric makes a run with 2 swordsmen and another young blood. Turn 1 comes to a quick close as we look to turn 2. Remember, there will be no route tests in this game. We will be playing for 8 turns unless one side voluntarily flees the battlefield. As we look to turn 2, there will be continued moves from both sides as the dregs continue to move forward, staying out of line of sight. The direwolf continues to shoot down the board, moving 9 inches. The ghouls are going to follow behind them, along with the necromancer. The vampire is going to move forward as well, declaring that he is hiding. Ghouls on the right flank make their way into a scoring objective. The zombies crawl up behind them, moving at 4 inches. As a quick note, this is a father-son gaming channel, and you will see my son Parker helping out his dad, moving the miniatures around, rolling dice for the other side, as well as making some of the tactical decisions. With movement done, we flip over to the Reiklanders, and we do have some moves happening on the right flank with a crossbowman as well as one of the bowmen. Another marksman with a crossbow goes into a scoring objective here. In the middle of the board, we are going to see the marksman move forward along with the swordsman and the youngblood Wilshire. and Elric and his men on the left flank will do a run action. All men are moving forward towards that rear scoring objective. In the shooting phase, 2 Reiklanders knock arrows and fire. They are long range and they moved, so needing 5s, they both miss. We move to marksmen on the Reiklanders' right flank, and another archer fires, this time aiming at the direwolf, and it's a miss as well. Turn 2 concludes, and both sides now have fighters in scoring objectives. These are buildings marked with the orange dice. In order to score the objective, you have to be inside. With turn 3 on the horizon, we move back to the Undead, and the ghouls move forward, occupying a position near this window. Zombies continue to trudge forward behind them, moving at their full movement range, which is 4 inches. One of the dregs continues to move forward, and then the direwolf is going to use this opportunity to scoot out of line of sight, moving very quick at 9 inches. The necromancer, along with his ghouls and a dreg, burst through the windows here and look to take position near the center scoring objective. Now the vampire was supposed to be touching the wall here, so we played it as such. He climbs and jumps down, rolls 2 initiative checks, fails 1, so he falls, takes 2 hits at strength 4. 1 does convert into a wound, and he will have 1 wound remaining. As this is going on, Reiklanders in the center of the board shuffle over just a bit, while the Reiklanders on the left flank continue to make their way forward, unable to run now as the ghouls are within 8 inches. On the mercenary right flank, marksman elects to run, while the crossbowman elects to run as well. Shooting phase opens up with 2 marksmen with bows, firing into targets needing 6s. They did move, and their targets do have cover. The archer's arrows are true, finding their targets. The first arrow finds the ghoul, and even though he is toughness 4, it wounds on a 5. The ghoul is knocked down as a result, and the second arrow finds the dreg, critically wounding him. The wound is a master strike, and the dreg falls in a slump, taking 2 wounds and going out of action. In the building along the Reikland backfield, a crossbowman fires an arrow across the board at one of the zombies that he can see in the buildings. It is long range, and the target is in cover, so he needs 5s, and he misses. With turn 3 in the books, it is the Reiklanders that draw first blood. There are now 2 undead that are occupying buildings in scoring positions. Reiklanders continue to move up the left flank, looking to challenge 1 building on the undead starting side. As we move back to the undead for turn 4, the direwolf changes position again, moving 9 inches. A dreg moves forward, announcing that he is hiding behind a low wall. Zombies continue to shuffle in the building, creating almost a tar pit that the Reikland mercenaries will have to go through. The vampire moves forward on 1 wound and bursts through the doors. Seeing the enemy, the Reiklanders absolutely paralyzed at what lies ahead. The undead then shuffle ghouls over. They both declare that they are hiding behind the debris. As we move to the Reiklanders, men on their left flank continue to move forward, only moving 4 inches. Men among the gravestones move, trying to distance themselves from the vampire that could potentially charge them. Over on the right flank, mercenaries continue to try to get into position to draw bows against enemy targets. Archers in the center have positioned themselves to fire upon the zombies again through the doorway. Both arrows miss this time, the crossbowman attempting to do the same thing, and he is going to miss as well. Another arrow attempts to fire through the doorway, targeting the wolf that is on the other side. Because he moved in cover, a 5 is needed, and the shot misses as well. With turn 4 in the books, that was some lackluster shooting from the mercenaries on that turn in particular. We're going to go back to the Undead, gearing up for turn 5, potentially ready to see some melee combat. And as turn 5 kicks off, the wolf can smell the enemy near. He announces a charge running through the doorway and into one of the archers. Ghouls announce charges as well at the center of the board, and needing to get a big roll on the die here, the first is successful. A ghoul pops out of hiding and comes screaming across the courtyard, forcing a leadership check in fear as he is intercepted by the other marksman. Another ghoul attempts to charge as well, but does not make it into combat. A leadership test is taken and failed at the time of the charge. For remaining moves, the necromancer moves up and goes into hiding. The dreg continues to creep up the board, staying hidden. In our first bout of hand-to-hand combat, the ghoul is attacking the archer. At weapon skill 2, he hits, needing a 4, but fails to wound. The marksman fights back with his dagger. He lands a hit, but he needs a 5 to wound and fails. Meanwhile, the direwolf gets 2 attacks on his charge, and he does land a hit. The wolf is unable to cause a wound, however, and the marksman fights back, landing a hit, but is also unable to wound. We quickly move to the Reiklander's turn. The crossbowman announces a charge into the wolf, but fails his leadership test, needing a 7, and remains frozen. At the center of the board, a swordsman fails his leadership test, trying to charge a ghoul. The archer, however, is successful, rolls a 7, and moves into combat. In remaining moves on the Reikland left flank, they continue to send their group of warriors forward, moving 4 inches, now getting into charge range on the next turn. The marksman with a crossbow is also going to shuffle to the window, bring the direwolf below into line of sight. As we move into hand-to-hand combat, an archer strikes the ghoul and is going to land a hit. The roll to wound also needs a 5, and it's good. We roll up on the injury table and the ghoul is stunned. The remaining archer uses his attack to clear him off the board. As we continue in combat, with an unsuccessful attack from the marksman on the wolf strikes the marksman and then lands a wound against his opponent. The result is a critical, hitting a vital part, and the marksman is taken off the board. With turn 5 concluded, we now see casualties on both sides. The mercenaries know they have to clear through a tar pit of zombies to score this back objective. With turn 6 upon us, the wolf lets loose a howl as he charges into the marksman with a crossbow. Fear test is good. Zombies then announce charges into the swordsman. Fear tests are good. The zombies are looking to pile in as many as they can. Another leadership test is taken and passed as they continue to charge into combat. In the courtyard, a ghoul announces a charge into one of the marksmen, and the leadership test is passed on a 7 or less. In remaining moves, zombies lumber forwards, forming a blockade along the building line. The ghouls reposition as well, getting into an area where they can see and possibly take advantage of a diving charge. The drag remains hidden and moves into one of the scoring buildings, and we move into hand-to-hand combat. 2 of the zombies attack the swordsman. They both land hits. The swordsman attempts to parry one of the hits but fails. With 1 successful wound rolled, he then takes his armor save and fails, and he rolls up for a knocked down result. Back in the courtyard, a ghoul leaps into combat. He lands a strike. He is then going to roll to wound, which is successful, and then rolls for an out of action, taking the marksman out. The direwolf also charged into combat, getting 2 attacks. He hits twice as well. He is going to wound twice, and then end up stunning the marksman. As we move to the mercenaries, the marksman will be able to get to his back while the swordsman is able to stand up. With combat across the board, both sides trying to get stuck in and score the objectives. The swordsman passes a leadership check on a 7 or less, charging into combat. Elric, however, fails and remains frozen in fear. In the center of the board, a swordsman attempts to charge into a ghoul, but also fails a leadership check and remains frozen. In the shooting phase, the marksman looses an arrow close range and lands a hit, but at toughness 4, it fails to wound. Towards the back of the board, a marksman with a crossbow fires at the direwolf and lands a hit on a 3. The hit is converted into a wound and the direwolf is knocked down. With shooting complete, we move to hand-to-hand combat. The swordsman strikes at the zombie, needing 3s to hit. He wounds, rolling a 5, and stuns the zombie. Meanwhile, the swordsman beside him unable to land a hit as the zombie attacks back, failing to hit as well. Turn 6 concludes, and the day is starting to run short as the mercenaries are starting to run out of turns. They're going to have to make moves forward if they want to stay in this game. As the undead prepare for turn 7, the direwolf returns to his feet. A zombie on the other side of the board rolls back over as well. We will see more zombies launch themselves into combat, and leadership tests will need to be taken from the mercenaries. The first against the swordsman is failed, and he will hit on 6s. Another zombie looks to wrap around on the other swordsman, and the leadership test is good, and the charge will be successful. A ghoul announces a charge into a marksman. A leadership test is passed, and he will be intercepted by the swordsman. Meanwhile, the sneaky dregs continue to remain hidden, slowly working their way up the board, getting closer to scoring positions. One dreg here now moves into a building which is considered scoring. Remaining moves see zombies pile forwards to block access to the building. As we move to hand-to-hand combat, the direwolf automatically hits, but fails to wound. In the courtyard, the ghoul lands a hit against the swordsman, but fails to wound, needing a 4. The swordsman strikes back, landing a hit of his own, but needs a 5 to cause a wound, and fails. Meanwhile, a zombie successfully hits a swordsman. The swordsman will attempt to parry, in which he is going to fail. The wound roll, however, is no good. As the swordsman strikes back, he is going to land a hit needing 3s. He is going to cause a wound on the zombie as well, and then rolls for and out of action as the zombie is slain. Beside him, another swordsman is engaged with a charging zombie. The zombie strikes and misses. The swordsman fights back, needing 6s as he failed his leadership test and fails. The remaining zombie now strikes the swordsman, lands a hit, but the blow is parried. As we move to the mercenaries for turn 7, Elric overcomes his fear and charges into the zombie. As a quick note from the recovery phase, the marksman was able to fully stand back up from being knocked down. We've then got a Youngblood passing a leadership check to charge into combat as well. While the marksman in the courtyard is going to move away, the Youngblood Wilshire passes a leadership check, charging into the ghoul. The marksman with a crossbow elects to move forward, trying to get line of sight across the board. In hand-to-hand combat, the marksman strikes first but misses. The direwolf then strikes back and misses as well. In the courtyard, Wilshire attacks with his 2 daggers. He lands 1 hit but fails to wound. The swordsman beside him hits and then wounds, and then takes the ghoul out of action. The first combat we see on the other side is a zombie trying to hit Elric, and he misses. Elric strikes last and misses as well. In the center of the melee, a swordsman will hit. He then rolls to wound the zombie, which is successful, and then he takes him out of action. Alongside him, the Youngblood auto hits but can't wound. The swordsman is going to wound, however, and then successfully take the zombie out of action. As turn 7 wraps up, it could be too little too late for the mercenaries. We are moving to turn 8, and the Undead have played this pretty sneaky with their dregs. They are close or in scoring positions. And for the Undead, turn 8 will kick off with a successful leadership check when a zombie announces a charge into one of the swordsmen. A ghoul is going to take initiative checks to attempt to jump down just to block the way to the building. He fails, ends up taking D3 hits, which is only 1. At his toughness of 4, there's no wound. Remaining moves sees a dreg which has been hidden moving up the board, sneakily moving in to contest an objective building. In combat, the marksman attempts to strike the direwolf, and he will land a hit. He does not wound. The direwolf cannot strike him back. On the opposite side of the board, a swordsman strikes the zombie but fails to wound him. The zombie then turns to strike Elric, landing a hit. It is going to be a wound, and Elric is going to fail his armor save, and he will be taken out of action. The zombie beside them was able to stand up in their recovery phase. The swordsman will strike but miss. The zombie strikes back and misses. As we move to the bottom of the turn for the mercenaries, the marksman is going to move into the building, which will contest the objective. In hand-to-hand combat, the zombie nor the swordsman could make any progress. Turn 8 ends, and so does our game. Now the objective we are showing here is contested, as there is a mercenary as well as an undead player in it. The undead will control the center objective. The objective here is also contested, but the undead do have one dreg in a building on the back side of the board. This will leave the undead controlling 2 objectives while the other 2 objectives are contested. It will be an undead victory today. I hope you enjoyed this presentation of Mordheim. We are going to wrap up with key injuries and what both warbands found as they scour the city of Mordheim. The Undead have claimed victory over the Reikland mercenaries today. Reiklanders did find 2 weird stone while exploring the ruins of Mordheim. Along the way, they also found a straggler that will help them find Weirdstone potentially in the next game. Elric was bitten by a zombie, and upon returning to camp, was beheaded by his own men. The Reiklanders also lost a marksman in the battle. The Undead searched as well, and while they did find 4 Weirdstone, they rolled no doubles for exploration. A dreg was injured with madness and rolled up for frenzy, and they also lost 2 zombies. We will get warbands updated, and we look forward to playing the next game. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for watching this one. Supporters Club, your names are on the screen now. Really appreciate your support. It's by no means necessary. If you've watched the video this far, you've done more than enough to support my channel, so thank you so much. Take care.